morning you might see it. Yeah, never say die. Got to go.
Oh boy, everybody, I hope you are ready for a deck I basically made up by myself. Damon is known for his good draw deck. He loves to draw cards, but his best monster drawer is not in the game, and I'm afraid I had to make stuff up. The only cards that do exist in this game that were in Damon's deck are Doron, and I think he used Shield Crush, and you know what? I might be done there. I made up the rest. Because Damon is known for being the draw power deck, I gave him a bunch of draw power cards. Some things that people will see as illegal, but I'm going to do it anyway. So let's go ahead and start talking about Damon's rare cards. What isn't rare? He's got the Morphing Jar. He's got the Pot of Avarice. He's got the Triple Pot of Greed. He's got the Good Goblin Housekeeping. He's got the Upstart Goblins. This man loves to draw cards, and that's about it. Granted, he likes to predict what card's coming next. That's another thing he did. And the only card I could find that will do that is kind of part of this time period is Reversal Quiz, which is send all cards in your hand and on your side of the field to the graveyard. Call the type card, spell, trap, or monster on top of your deck. If you call right, exchange your current life points with your opponents. So this is not the worst top deck card, but it's a terrible card early in the game. But looking at Damon, this deck should be known for deck outs and is completely horrifying to look at. So let's get into Damon's stats. Damon's stats are weird. Their attack stat is completely bogged down by Doron, his only actual monster, at 900. Skelengel, 900. Spirit of the Pot of Greed, 100. Morphing Jar, 700. Dark Mimic, 100. Dark Mimic, 1000. Avatar of the Pot, 1200. But then you get into his boss monsters. His boss monsters that I given him are Muka Muka at 600, but you get 300 attack for each and defense for each card in your hand. And as you can see, you're pretty much always going to have a lot of cards in your hand. This is weird. This is going to be hard to talk about. Oh, and the Enraged Muka Muka, which this card gains 400 attack and defense for each card in your hand. This monster is unstoppable in a deck like this. When it comes to pure attack power, the Enraged Muka Muka is a monster. Because your Pot of Greeds, your Good Goblin Housekeepings, your Jar Greed even, your Upstart Goblins, your Spirit of the Pot of Greeds letting you draw more cards, your Avatar of the Pot letting you throw away Pot of Greed to draw 3 cards. It's terrifying. This deck, and with all these monsters, every single monster here lets you draw cards. If you're low on cards, Morphing Jar will get you a whole new hand. This deck is actually terrifying when it comes to attack, and actually not terrifying when it comes to attack. Because there is the potential to have high attack. And since it's only potential to have high attack, I can't give him a good rating on it. In fact, I actually have to give him a bad rating. So, Damon, despite having the Muka Mukas, despite having all this draw power to make the Muka Mukas amazing, I'm going to have to give your deck rating a 4. Yes, a 4. The rest of these monsters are ass, but all of these monsters, except Doron, are about drawing new cards, and all of these monsters will probably get you Muka Muka or Enraged Muka Muka. You might not ever get to summon Enraged Muka Muka unless you tribute a regular Muka Muka, but at the end of the day, the rest of these cards are complete ass, and Muka Muka and Enraged Muka Muka, specifically in this kind of a deck, is really, really good. In fact, when I tested this deck, I always drew a Muka Muka because I always had so much draw power to only take 1 to 3 turns. And by the time I got Muka Muka, it was literally at over 2,000 attack. And then I would tribute it for an Enraged Muka Muka I would get eventually, and it would be at 4,000 attack at sometimes. It's literally insane how strong I was able to get this Enraged Muka Muka. But the rest of the cards are ass in terms of attack, so I can't give him the attack points he deserves. He's going to be at 4 bars. But getting into his defense stat, that's where things get weird too, because this also increases defense. It's not just attack. And the rest of his monsters are pretty ass in defense. I guess Dark Mimic's okay with the 1,000, the 1,300. It's not good enough. None of these are good enough. And only Muka Muka and Rage Muka Muka make a difference. But their defenses are actually worse than their attacks. So I'm going to have to give Damon's defense stat an easy 3 bars. Damon's defense stat is 100% going to be 3 bars. Now, that's weird, but it's true. 3 bars. Oh, yeah. I can't give him better than that, and it's still being generous. It's still being generous. I'm going to have to give him 3 bars. Okay. Getting into Damon's speed stat. This is the fastest character in the game. Looking at this screen, how could you not say this is the fastest? Being able to draw is literally part of your speed stat. Your speed stat is special summons, searching your deck. Technically, drawing is searching the top of your deck. It's not searching, but you know what I mean. You're still drawing from the top of your deck. It's a blind search. And all of these cards do it. Every single one of these cards let you search your deck. The only ones that don't are Muka Muka, Doron, and Enraged Muka Muka. Everything else here has a chance or will guarantee give you more cards. And Shield Crush and whatever. It doesn't matter. Jar Robber, everyone has Pot of Greed. It actually will come in handy. It negates Pot of Greed and lets you draw a card. It's funny. Honestly, this deck is the fastest. It's maxed. There's no way. There's no other way. Jaden's deck was maxed out because of all the search potential and all of the special summons. This deck is maxed out because of all the draw potential. This is the fastest deck in the series. No doubt. Damon's deck is insane. But Damon only has 4 monsters worth anything, and 2 of them require attributes. So, because he only has 4 monsters worth anything, he's actually in a lot of danger. One popping card takes out 1/4 of the forces in his deck that can actually do anything. Everything else doesn't do anything for him. In fact, he'd probably deck himself out with how fast this deck is. And that's why we got to get into the skill stat. Now, the skill stat, this is where I have some trouble. I know this deck seems like it would be affected by the skill stat, but you can completely ignore that. This is all speed you're looking at. The skill stat would be deck out, and Morphing Jar does affect deck out, so I can give him a point in skill for that. Another card that affects the skill stat would be Reversal Quiz. Even though it's not a good one, it's a 1 out of 3 chance that you do something. Don't pick Trap. It's a 50-50 chance that you do something. And if you're at least decent, you won't pick Trap. You would probably... You do gain life points technically. So technically that's part of stall. But since you're throwing everything away, I feel like I can ignore that. Upstart Goblin is anti-skill. It's pro speed, anti-skill because you're healing your opponent. So that's not good. It's not anti, it's reverse skill. You're actually giving your opponent skill. So looking at all this, the only skill card I'm really seeing is Morphing Jar, and that's for deck out, and no matter what, you're going to be the one that decks out first. So looking at this deck, I'm afraid, based on my definition of what skill is, which is win condition, burn, I count piercing, direct attacks I count, like a Toon monster that does that. God, what else? I can't even think about what else right now. I'm sorry. I know there's more. It's stall. Stall could be gaining life points. Stall can be monsters that can't be destroyed, stuff like that. Stall could be spells and traps that don't let you get attacked. Looking at this is one of the least skilled decks I've ever seen. Just play the cards. Just play your cards. Just play your cards. Just play your cards. Honestly, I'm gonna give Damon a 1. Damon's skill stat is a 1. You better get these cards if you want to win the duel. And then we could get into Damon's brick stat, which don't even make me laugh. You know it's perfection. This deck is perfection. You're never gonna brick. You know how you would brick with this deck? You have to draw 2 Enraged Muka Mukas, 2 Dorons, 2 Shield Crushes, and a Reversal Quiz. That's the only way you're gonna brick with this deck. Maybe a Jar Robber. Maybe. This deck is unbrickable in my opinion. In fact, it's not just my opinion. I've tested the deck. I've never not drawn at least a Pot of Greed or something. This deck is insane when it comes to bricking. This deck is unbrickable. This deck is god tier in those terms. This deck is god tier in terms of speed and god tier in terms of freaking bricking. But what it's not got in terms is, it only has 4 monsters that do anything in terms of damage. You lose these 4 monsters, your duel is over. And 2 of them are tributes. So, it's a really high risk, high reward deck. It's super fun to play. It's super funny to play with your friends. Anyone that's going to be in my Subscriber Dynasty series, copy this deck immediately and you have to try it out. It's so funny. It is so funny using this deck. Okay? Me and my friends laugh our shit off. It's super funny. So go ahead and do this. I'm going to go into the potential of Damon winning the tournament. And this is what I have to say about that. Damon winning the tournament with this deck is going to be a 2.5 stars. Now, I understand that might seem a little low for me, for people that are like, wait, what? Are you stupid? Look at this. He has so much draw power. He'll always get Muka Muka. What are you talking about? It's 2.5 stars because I've tested this deck and I've lost many times to other decks that simply pop monsters, that simply stall me out. I deck myself out sometimes. I've literally decked myself out against opponents. And there's nothing I can do. Because I didn't get Muka Mukas in time. Because I didn't get damage in time. Most of the duels, I only had 2 Muka Mukas. I never got the Enraged Muka Mukas in time. And guess what? Those 2 Muka Mukas can't win. They're not fast enough. They really aren't. 2 monsters can't end the duel fast enough. Especially when my opponent has stall cards, floaters, some invincibility cards. The only thing that stops invincibility in this deck is Shield Crush. Which, thank God he actually used that in the show. So, that's going to be it for Damon. 2.5 stars. He definitely can win the tournament. But it's just depending on his bracket. It's not really dependent on him because he's gonna draw Muka Muka. He's gonna draw Enraged Muka Muka. You're gonna be able to pull that off, but it's based on who he's up against. There are opponents that 100% counter this deck. 100%, and there are opponents that 100%. Most opponents actually don't care about all this draw power, but depending on the bracket, Damon can win the tournament with this deck. A subscriber playing as Damon can win the tournament with this deck. I think you guys should be very excited to play it. Please download, literally play this deck immediately. Make this deck as soon as you can and play it. Anyone that's in my Discord, have fun. It's so much fun. And I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.